All right. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches, Bava, Basra, Daf Ayin Ches. And we're starting at the final two dots on Ayin Zayin and Beis, about 10 lines or so from the bottom. We had learned in our Mishnah, and it's quoted here in these two dots, Macharas Hatzemed lo Macharas Habakar, that if a person's selling the yoke, which holds all of the animals together, then all you've sold is the yoke, but you haven't sold the animals that come along with the yoke. So says the Gemara, Hey Chidami, what exactly is it that you're teaching us? If in fact we call a yoke, ula bakar, people are specific about their language. I'm selling a yoke or I'm selling an animal, then pshita. Tzimda zavinle bakar lo zavinle. Then it's pashut that if you say that you're selling a tzemed, that you're only selling the yoke and you're not selling anything else. Ve'ela dekarule nami lebakar tzimda. If in fact the tzimda also references a bakar, then kule zavinle, then l'chora. If a person were to say tzemed, and tzemed meant the whole everything, the yoke and the animals, so then it should be that everything is sold. So what exactly was the case? What was the Mishnah trying to teach us? And the Gemara says 5 lines from the bottom, yes, it's a place where typically people use the correct and appropriate terminology. A yoke is a yoke, and it's the bakar are the bakar. But in this particular community, the economy the bakar tzimda. But some people also refer to the bakar by the broader language of tzimda, of tzemed, of the yoke. So therefore, that's our machlokas that we have in our Mishnah in the middle of Ayin Zayin and Beis. And 3 lines from the bottom, the Gemara calls it out. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Hadam and Modin. We can look and see if the price makes sense. If you're charging $2,000 for a leather yoke to hold the animals, that's not even mistaber. That's not reasonable. So obviously the animals are included. So he just says we look at the money. V'rabbanon sabre, the rabbis say, ein hadamim raya. The money's not a raya. Says the Gemara, asking a kasha on the sheet of the Rabbanon. We're on the last line of Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. V'i ein hadamim raya. If the monies are not looked at all, then we have another problem. And I referenced this yesterday briefly, which is that's usser. You're not allowed to overcharge. So the Gemara says, Rabbanan, I don't understand your shita. What do you mean we ignore the money? If you're selling a tzemed for $2,000, but the tzemed only costs $10, and the animals cost almost $2,000, you're overcharging by 200-fold. That's not even close to reasonable. You can charge up to a sixth. So what then is the shita of the Rabbanan? It should be, if we say, Ein hadamim raya, it should be lehavi bittul mekach. It should nullify the whole sale. Yet the Rabbanan seems to not say that. The chitema, turning to the top of Ayin Chesamid Aleph, the chitema, and if you want to say that bittul mekach the Rabbanan leslahu, that the rabbis hold that we're not mevatel the mekach. Yes, you have to return the money above 1/6, but we just have to get into that threshold. But we're not mevatel the mekach, and they don't hold of that Rabbanan leslahu. If you want to say that they don't agree that the whole mekach is batel, then below. That's not true either. But it's not. We have a Bryce in Bava Metzia, so we've seen this before. If a person is selling a Sefer Torah, or if they're selling an animal, or if they're selling a pearl of some kind, jewelry, there is no ona by those things. They're priceless. And therefore, whatever the common market value is irrelevant. And I guess either because of supply and demand or because of our mindset about these items, people are just willing to pay anything. And therefore, there's no isser of ona in those cases. And Amru lo, the Chachamim said back to Rabbi Yehuda, lo Amru ela es elu. They limited that list. What does that mean? That means that according to the Rabbanon and all other cases, there is bittul mekach. My ein damim raya nami diktani davi bittul mekach. So maybe what the Rabbanon meant is not like we thought. The Gemara says, maybe you're right. Maybe when the Rabbanon at the bottom of Ayin Zayin Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom, when the Rabbanon said, Ein Adamim Raya, they weren't saying that the transaction's still intact. No, the whole transaction is destroyed. We misunderstood the Rabbanon. We thought that the transaction was still in place. And we only had to return the money to get us back to a margin of error of less than 1/6. Here we see that that's not true. We see that answer number 1, according to the Rabbanon, is that there is Bittul Mekach. Another possible answer is that ki amar amur rabbanon ono bitul mekach bichdei shadas note to it. When did the rabbanon say that there's an isser of ona and there's bitul mekach? That's only when it's bichdei shadas note, when it's so obvious that what happened was an error. right? We've seen this happen before where airlines meant to put $500 for a ticket and they put 50. It's so obvious there's an error. In those cases, those sales would not be valid, unfortunately. When it's so unreasonable, like it says 200,000, it doesn't say 200, and you got to hit zero way more times. You got to break a lot of rules to get to that point. So then says the Gemara, where it's a case of Eina das nota, then lo, there we would not say there's bittul mekach because amor matana yavle. Let's say in my childhood, I would ask my father for money for a slice of pizza. And my father says, here's a $20 bill. What is happening in his head? Just go buy a pie, right? Just go buy, get out of here. Go take my money. It's a matana. It's pashut, that was what his intent was. And I actually have a distinct memory of you doing that once, of giving me a 20 and saying it's just money. I've quoted that story many times. True story, by the way. Good hashkafa on finances. So anyways, the Gemara here is using this principle. When a gift makes no sense, a piece of pizza is $2.50, and I ask for money, and my father gives me a $20, $50 bill, whatever the number. It's so obvious what's happening. You don't even have to talk about it. It's clear. He's just being a giving person, and that's how it is. So that's how the Gemara concludes as a second possibility within the Rabbanan, and that brings us to a new Mishnah on Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'hakol nihya bidbaro. Amen. Yo, I'm stressed out enough about Rosh Hashanah. I don't need your nigunim to get like a worm in my head. New Mishnah. Hamocher es hachamor. Let's say.
After the first 2 days in Shabbos.
What's that?
You can recover after the first 2 days. It'll be Shabbos.
What is this? It's not Shabbos this year for Rosh Hashanah, is it?
No, Thursday, Friday. Then you recover on Shabbos.
Thursday, Friday is Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah.
I didn't even know
Wednesday
that.
night, Thursday night, Friday night, Shabbos.
I don't mind 3-day yontif. I just didn't know what day of the week it was. I also like having shofar. I know.
It's
I'm just a big fan. Yeah, it's just
wholeheartedly agree.
it's such a hard sugya. It's such a hard
After
sugya.
the last 12 months.
Yeah, come. But they say that Shabbos is a bigger chap. Shabbos is I don't know. It's a hard sugya. It's a hard sugya. Hamocher es hachamor. Yeah, a big schus. But the Mefarshim write that. They say it's a bigger skula to skula. It's a bigger, I don't know what the right word is. Schus. Hamocher es hachamor, if a person sells a donkey, lo mochar kelev. The accompanying kelim that typically come with it. So that's not included. Nachum Hamadi Omer. It's not a terribly common name in the Mishnayos, but we know him from the Perek Obama Madlikin. Nachum Hamadi says, Machar Kelev. I disagree with you. Straight up argument between the two of them. Do we include the kelim? Do we not? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Pa'amim mechurin, Pa'amim einon mechurin. Sometimes they're sold, sometimes they're not. What is his case? Ketzad haya chamor. Ketzad, what's the case? Haya chamor lefanav v'kelev lefanav v'kelev alav. If I'm selling a donkey and it's adorned in all of its kelim, the Amar lo machor li chamorcha zeh. Sell me this animal. Hare kelim mechurin. Then the kelim are sold. However, chamorcha hu, then ein kelim mechurin. Such subtlety in language. Chamor zeh versus it's chamor. Let's get it exact. It is chamorcha zeh or chamorcha hu. So there's a nafkamina there in regards to the kelim. We'll analyze this in the Gemara. So Amar Ula, the third of the way down as the Gemara opens. Machlokes between Tanakama and Nachum Hamadi is besak v'diskia v'chumni. The sak and the diskia are types of things that hold. They're like bags, basically. They hold or side, like these containers that hold items. And v'chumni, we'll soon see, was a particular chair that a woman would sit on an animal, because they would sit side saddle. We saw this in the Gemara in Pesachim, I don't know, 400 days ago, give or take, where we saw, is that true?
Yeah.
800 days ago. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
We have no idea when it happened. It was a long time ago. 2 years ago. It was a long time ago. Let's talk about important things. We saw over there that it was considered even pasnish to use the language of yeshiva, that a woman should sit on an animal. We said about tirkavna, rechiva versus yeshiva. We saw distinctions over there. So here, this chumni, we'll learn about it more in the Gemara a little bit later, was a seat that a woman would sit on when she was on an animal. And this machlokes between them is about these items. The Tanakama savar stam chamor lirchov koi. Fundamentally, the Tanakama was of the opinion that a chamor was to transport a person. Nachum Amadi savar stam chamor lemasui koi. And Nachum Amadi says no. The primary function of a donkey is to carry products. Now let's look back at their shitas. According to the Tanakama, of course the kalim are not included because they're only meant to move people. They're not meant to hold bags. Okay, people use them for other ulterior motives, but that's not the real fundamental reason. And Nachum Hamadi Lashita so holds that the whole point of a chamor is to carry kalim, and therefore the kalim are automatically included. That's how the Gemara explains. Aval, says the Gemara, just about halfway down on Ayin Ches and Aleph, Ukaf, the saddle, Umir Das, Kilkili, V'chabak, the different straps that hold on the saddle, all those other things, Divrei Kol Mechur, and those are basically, I'm using my own language here, this is not from the Rishonim, it's basically batel to the animal, right? If you're buying a horse and it has a saddle on it, it's pretty obvious that it should be included, pretty obvious. Meisvei, the Gemara has a kasha on the sheet of Ula. Let's review what Ula said. Ula said the machlokes is in regards to sak v'diskia v'chumni, that the Tanakamas held that they're not included, and Nachum Amadi said that they are. So let's see what his marimakom is. We said in our Mishnah, Meisvei, chamor v'kelav ani mocher lach. If a person says, I'm selling you both, hareza mochar, es ha'ukaf, ve'es ha'mardas, ve'es ha'kilkuli, ve'es ha'chabak. According to the Tanakama of this brisa, it says that if a person says chamor v'kelav, that includes the saddle and all the straps and the blankets. However, aval lo machar sak v'diskia v'chumni. However, according to this brisa, the containers and the seat for the woman are not included. However, ubizman she'amar lo hi v'chol masha aleha, when the seller says, I'm selling it and all of the accompanying articles, all the accompanying equipment, then hare kulan mechurin, then all of them are sold. Now, Taima, the reason why this is the understanding of the Brisa is the Amar le chamor v'kelev hu dekani ukaf mardas, that the reason why the ukaf and the mardas were included was because of chamor v'kelev, because I said a broader language. Halo amar le hachi lo, but if it wasn't the case, if it was just stam, then things would not have been included. So how can Ula say that according to Nachum Hamadi, that things are included? Not stam, only if you're explicit about it. So says the Gemara, that's not true. Hu adin, the afal gav de lo amar lechamor v'kelev nami, ukaf umar das mechurin. Even if we don't specify chamor v'kelev, the ukaf, the saddle, and the mardas, the blanket, and all of the straps, they're also mechurin. V'hakamash malan, what's really being taught over here is that the afal gav de amar lechamor v'kelev, even though the language was a broader language, I'm selling you a donkey and its equipment, but sak v'diskia v'chumni lo kani. But these things are not included in the sale. And that is a reasonable answer to the question against Ula. Let's just drill down to what the chumni is. My chumni. What is this thing that we were talking about? So says the Gemara, Omar Rav Papa Bar Shmuel, Merkavta de Noshi. It's some type of chair that was meant for a woman to ride on an animal. Take a look. We're going to go up a little bit in the Rashba. I'm sorry, not even really. Yeah. The second line of the Gemara within the Rashbam, 6-7 lines into the wide lines of the Rashbam. V'chumni, merkav to denashi uchadilakaman, v'gam hu mimin masui. That was also not a typical saddle. It was like a way that she was being carried. It wasn't the normal way to do it. Shaisha yosheves kemasui. She doesn't sit in a way where she's riding the animal. She sits in a way where she's equivalent to one of the packages. It's not a normal way to sit on the animal. Most donkeys, most mules men are riding them. So if a woman was on the donkey in her special seat, I'm like picturing the motorcycle with the thing on the side. So she was sitting in a weird type of seat that was specific for women because they would sit in a more modest way. Very good. Let's touch up our Mishnah a little bit. Iboyaluhu, the Chachamim in the base medrash, the Talmidim asked the Shaila. The machlokes that we have in our Mishnah, is that be'odon alav machlokes? Do we have a machlokes between the Tanakama and Nachum Hamadi when the equipment is on the animal? Aval b'she'enon alav modeluhu nachum hamadi. But then Nachum Hamadi would agree that if they are not on him, that they are not sold. Odilma b'she'enon alav machlokes. Perhaps the machlokes between the Tanakam and Nachum Hamadi is when the equipment is not on the animal. Aval be'odan alav. But had it been that the equipment was on the animal, modelei rabbanon l'Nachum, that the rabbis would then agree to Nachum. So what's the framing of the machlokes? Do we say that their argument is when the chamor is being sold with the kalim, with the equipment on the animal? Or do we say that the machlokes is when it's not? So says the Gemara, Toshma, 6 lines from the bottom of Ayin Ches Amud Aleph, Toshma. Uvizman she'amar lo hu v'chol ma she'alav harei kulan mechurin. We had said in our Mishnah that, I think that was in the Brisa, no? Yeah, that was in the Brisa. The Brisa says that if the seller says it and all of its equipment, harei kulan mechurin, then everything is sold. Now, if you want to say that we're talking about the first approach within the question, that maybe the machlokas between the Tanakam and Nachum Hamadi is where the equipment is on the animal, then Hamani, then we could understand this Brisa fits according to the Rabbanon. That according to the Rabbanon, that even though the animal's on them, lo machar kelav, it doesn't count. That was what the Tanakama would hold. Elai amris b'she'ein odon alav machlokas, that where it is not on the body, aval be'odon alav divrei akol mechurin. But if in fact, while the animal is wearing the equipment, everyone would say it's sold, hamani, that's nobody's shita. So to this, the Gemara tries to give its answer. It must therefore be that we are talking about be'odan alav machlokas. So says the Gemara. The Gemara responds, no la'olam. It could also be b'she'ein odan alav machlokas v'rabbanani. Perhaps we could say the machlokas between the Tanakam and Nachum Hamadi is even where the equipment is not on the animal, and it's according to the Rabbanon. Ve'ema uvizman she'amar lohu v'chol ma she'ra'ui liosala. We have to touch up the brisa to say not everything that he's wearing, but everything that's fitting for what he's wearing. And the Rabbanon would be lenient and say, no, that's not included. So we tried to figure out an answer to this question, and we failed. Let's try again. Toshma, 2 lines before the bottom of the page on Ayin Ches Amud Aleph. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, this was what we saw in our Mishnah. Pa'amim mechurin, pa'amim she'enon mechurin. We had said in our Mishnah that according to the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, sometimes the equipment is sold and sometimes the equipment is not sold. My lav, amai de ka'amar Tanakama koi Rabbi Yehuda. Was Rabbi Yehuda talking about the Tanakama shita? So let's see how this would work. The Tanakama in our Mishnah said that hamocher es hachamor lo mochar kelav. And on that, Rabbi Yehuda says, well, sometimes yes and sometimes no. So that's what the Gemara is suggesting now. So says the Gemara, lo. Rabbi Yehuda, the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, as we turn to the top of Ayin Ches Amud Beis, and we'll be learning about 3/4 of this page, and then we'll stop. Then Amir Hashem will be able to catch up tomorrow to get to the bottom of Pei Amud Aleph, since tomorrow's Thursday. So that says the Gemara, you can't ask any kashas from Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda is milsa achrisi ka'amar. He was talking about something altogether different. And that is a Rashbam over here at the top of the page. Milsa achrisi ka'amar, inhu they ayru b'she'ein odan alav, aval ba'odan alav divya kol machor. But the also Rabbi Yehuda to say la'afluge adukya didhu de'afilu ba'odan alav pamim she'en mechor. He says even when it's attached to the body, sometimes it's not going to be sold. So therefore, that's also not a raya, and we don't have an answer to our question yet. Amar le Ravina the Rabashi Toshma. Let's try again. This is a brisa that we just saw. Machar esa karon. If a person is selling a karon, they're selling a carriage. Lo machar esa prados. They don't sell the mules that come along with the carriage. Vitani bar tachlifa bar ma'ara, Rav tachlifa bar ma'araba, kamei de Rabbi Abo. We had another brisa that completely went in the face of this Mishnah. Machar sakaron, machar saprados. We saw this brisa yesterday. But Amarle, how did we answer up this dira that sometimes the prados are included and sometimes they're not? Ana and lo machar tanan. Amarle ismi, would you like me to erase this brisa? Amarle lo, you should not erase it. Titarge masnischa be'adukim bo. We're talking about a case where they're all connected, and that's why they should be included. What's implied from here? Michlal, Dimas Nisin, if that Mishnah on Ayin Zayin was talking about Adukin, where they were connected, where the prados, the mules, were connected to the Karon, then perhaps we should say that our Mishnah, the next Mishnah, is B'She'ein Adukin Bo. Maybe that's what we should say. And therefore, we know that the equipment is not on the animals. And that would give us an answer to our question. So to this, the Gemara says, Umideresha b'she'ein odan alav, seifanami b'she'ein odan alav. Maybe we should say that just like in the Resha, it was ein odan alav, it wasn't on the body, so too in the Seifa. Says the Gemara, Adarabba, Ema Resha, I can give you still an earlier Mishnah. This Mishnah goes back to Ayin Gimel. We had said, when we spoke about the boats, that if a person sells a boat, he doesn't sell the slaves and he doesn't sell the merchandise that's on the boat. So we have multiple Mishnayos that are pulling us in different directions. The Mishnah from Ayin Zayin left us with one implication about our Mishnah. The Mishnah from Ayin Gimel left us with another. Ella, you cannot bring a raya from the earlier Mishnayos about whether or not our case and our Mishnah from Ayin Ches Amud Aleph is dealing with whether or not the equipment was on the animal. We have no idea. Elatana mili ktani. Every Mishnah is different, and this feature of whether or not the secondary items are connected to the primary item we're selling cannot be learned out from there. Simin Zagam Nasan, this is a reference to all the names that we're about to see. Amar Abaye, Rebbe Lazar, Birashbag, Birab Meir, Birab Nasan, V'Sumchus, V'Nachum Amadi, Kulhu Sfir Lahu, they all agree to the following principle. Ki Mazbin Inish Midi, Ihu V'Chol Tashmishte Mazbin. That when you're selling an item, all of the obvious things that come along with it are being sold. L'dugma, if you buy a phone, it's going to include the chargers that are in the box. It's pashut. That's how they sell them. That's how they sell them. There are exceptions to that rule, but b'derech klal, when you buy an item, the obvious things that come along with it, and the obvious things that don't. And we usually know where to cut the divide. We usually know. You go and buy a little bicycle for a child at Target. You go up to the cash register. They're going to ask you, would you like to buy insurance? The insurance is not included, and you should never buy. The insurance is not included. You have to pay for that. That's not included. What is included? Whatever they attach to the bike. If they attach a helmet to the bike, it's included. If they attach a lock to the bike, it's included. Just have to use your cup. Go pay attention. That's what the Gemara says. All of these Tanaim agree with this. Where do we see Rabbi Lazar Shita? We're 9 lines into the page here, about a quarter of the way down. Rabbi Lazar Ditznan. Rabbi Lazar Omar HaMocher es Beis Habad Mocher es HaKorah. The Korah, the beam that presses down on the olives, is the most integral part of the Beis Habad. It's like buying a bicycle without a wheel. Pashat that the front wheel is included. It's removable. It's included. It's Dvarim Shutim. Same thing with the Korah and the Beis Habad. Rashbag, what about him? Ditznan. Rashbag Omer Mocher Seir Mocher es Santar, which we saw machlokas about the word Santar a while back. Reb Meir, the Tanya, Reb Meir Omer Mocher es Kerem Mocher Tashmisha Kerem, that if you're going to sell a vineyard, you're selling everything that comes along with it. Reb Nasan v'Sumchos Bitzis v'Dugis, the two of them had said about the Bitzis and the Dugis, these were the small safety boats from the larger boats, right? The big, massive yachts can't make it all the way to shore. They're too heavy. They'll hit the sand. They'll hit the bank. So they have smaller boats. Those are included in the sale as well. And Nachum Hamadi, Hada Amran, that's our Mishnah. Nachum Hamadi said in our Mishnah that if a person is was mocher the chamor, it comes with all the kelim. So we see all these shitas in the Tanaim that when a person makes a sale, all of the assumed normal things that are included are considered included. We then saw in our Mishnah at the 2 dots here, a third of the way down, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Pamim Mechurin, and at the end of that Mishnah, we saw some very weird language. The language that we saw was that if the person said chamor chazeh, then the kelev were mechurin, then all the equipment that accompanies the chamor were included. But if we would have said chamor hu, then ein kelev mechurin. And the Gemara is going to try and answer that. Not going to try. The Gemara is going to deal with this question now. Ma'ishna chamor chazu, u'ma'ishna chamor hu. When we said chamor zu, that included all of the equipment that came along with the animal. But when we say chamor hu, it doesn't. Amar Rabba. Chamor chazu, if I go over to you and say, I'm going to say, Tex, I'm going to buy this cow off of you. I'm going to buy this chamor. And you say, yeah, sure, no problem. So there, yada de chamora didehu. I knew that the animal belonged to him. So I could have just said chamorcha, right? Text, I'm buying your chamor. Done. I didn't say I'm buying this chamor that's yours. This one, I'm buying. That's extra language. So then, v'hai de ka'amar lezu mishum kelab ka'amar le. So now we understand. When we say chamor chazu, I don't even need the word zu. The fact that I said zu teaches me that I'm adding another thing, the basic, which is the chamor plus all of its kelim. However, chamor chahu, that implies dilo yoda de chamor didehu. That implies that I didn't even know it was yours. So when I say chamor chahu, is that your chamor? Oh, it's yours. So then the word hu is not extra. And therefore, because the language of chamorcha is an inquisition of, is this your animal? Chamorcha? So the Gemara says then the kalim are not included because you didn't have any extra language to broaden the sale. So says the Gemara, and that brings us to yet another Mishnah, all again in the same genre. We're going to be stopping right before an Agadata. Tomorrow we'll start with a somewhat lengthy Agadata about the Yetzer Hara and about being in charge of our faculties and about being in charge of avoiding Averos. We'll deal with that tomorrow. But first, let's learn this new Mishnah and a little bit of Gemara, and then we'll call it wraps for the day. Hamocher es hachamor, a person selling a donkey. Mochar es hasiach, he sells the siach. So Rashi says, the Rashbam says, dibur hamaschil siach, beno shel chamor karui siach. We'll see tomorrow, and from a hashkafa lens, what the word siach means. However, while it's true that if I sell a donkey, it comes with its siach, mochar es hapara, lo mochar es beno. If I buy a cow, or if I sell you a cow, it doesn't come with its calf. We'll see why in the Gemara.
You're talking about pregnant animals or?
No, birthed animals. If an animal is pregnant, it's included. Yeah. Machar ashba, machar zvala. If I sell a garbage container, it comes with the zevel on the inside. Machar bor, machar meimela. If I sell you a pit, a water pit, the water's included. Machar kaveres, if I sell you a beehive, machar dvorim, it includes the bees. Machar shovach, machar yonim. And if I sell you a dove coop where these doves live, then machar yonim, the doves are included. Okay, says the Gemara, Heichi dami, I don't understand this distinction you're making between the chamor, where the siach is included in the sale, and the para, where its calf is not included. Id amar le, hi uvna. If the language was explicit, I want it and its animal, then afilu para ubna nami. Then that should even include the calf. So I don't understand. If the language was specific of hi uvna, I'm selling you it and its child, we should not see a distinction between a chamor where the siach is included and a para where it's not. And idelo amar le hi uvna. However, if it did not say in the sale, if the mocher did not say it and its child, then afilu chamor nami lo, manavshach. The distinction in the Mishnah is very difficult. It's shver. What did you say when you sold the animal? If you said hi uvna, it's both. If you didn't say hi uvna, then pashut, it's only the larger animal, the parent animal. Why would you ever assume that it's beyond that? So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa, to Amar le chamor menika upara menika ani mocher lach. Listen to this distinction. We said the same thing. I want the chamor that's menika, a nursing chamor, and I want a para that's menika. Now, is a chamor kosher? No. So its milk is not kosher. Kol hayotze min hatame tame. Anything that exits an animal that's tame is tame. The Gemara in Bechoros asks a bam kasha on drinking milk. If kol hayotze min hatame is tame, then how can you drink milk from a cow? You can't eat a cow. It's eiver min achai. So the milk should be an iser deoraisa to eat.
How's it an aver?
Doesn't matter if it's an aver. Kol hayotze min hatame, tame. The animal itself you cannot eat. It has a status of aver min achai. It's one of the Sheva Mitzvos b'nei Noach. How can you drink the yotzi min hatame? The yotzi min hatame is tame. And if the animal's an aver min achai, you can't drink the milk.
You're talking about a cow or a?
Kosher milk, a cow. It's a great question. And the Gemara responds in Bechoros, you're right. It's a pasuk. But it's not inherently that the milk is kosher. The milk should be aser because kol hayotze min hatame tame. Anyways, the Gemara says over here, why are we distinguishing between chamor menika, par menika, ani mocher lach? Says the Gemara, Bishlama para, I understand by the para why I was asking for a cow that's lactating. That makes perfect sense because I want a cow to produce milk for me, and therefore I don't need the calf. The calf is not lactating. I need the milk. So I need the mother. That makes perfect sense. Elachamor, my kamarle. You can't eat chamor milk. That's an Isser Doraisa. That's the whole svara behind Chalav Yisrael and the Kula and the Poskim that say that with our government and the FDA and all the rest, there's no way that they're going to mix up camel milk and cow milk. Not happening. Not happening. And therefore, that's why where some of the Kulas come in. So it says the Gemara, it must be that because the nursing distinction between a chamor and a cow is so severe because I can't drink the milk of the chamor, then it must be that this more inclusive thing was happening. Then therefore, it must therefore be that when I'm saying that I'm buying, when I say that I'm buying the chamor from you, I also get the siach. Why is the child of a chamor, the progeny of a chamor, Mark, that was just for you. Mark's on Zoom tonight. Why is it that when we say siach, why is it called a siach? Shemahalech achar sicha. Because the animal that is the child of a chamor, they listen to a soft voice. So if you speak softly to the animal, it will listen to you. And if you speak sharply, it will not. We'll stop right here at Amar Reb Shmuel Bar Nachman, and we'll pick up from here tomorrow night with an Agadata. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Thanks for the shout out.
I hear you, Mark. Are you there?
Yeah, thanks for the shout out.